I was not the type that would like draw at the back of my notebooks or anything. Maybe that was you.
Sure. Very well, yeah.
That's a question that comes up often. People really like mix it up to know, oh, what's an illustration, what's an icon, what's the difference. Icons usually should not exist on their own. They should come in a set.
What's your general approach to designing icons? What's the step like?
Okay. It always starts with research. I try to avoid using text in my icons. That is, the icon style itself, like the icon by itself should not have text in its design.
Oh,
But I
see.
always push for my icons to be used with labels. Hello, everyone. I'm Linda Ojo, and you're listening to Design Station podcast with Ufot Ubon. Design plus illustration equals design station.
Hello, everyone. You're welcome back to the Design Station podcast. My name is Ufot Ubon, and I am your host. And today I have with me an exceptional designer. Actually, I personally love to call her an iconic designer. Her work speaks volume. She finds the most simplistic way to explain complex visuals. In fact, you know what? There's nobody who can best introduce themselves and explain what they do than, the very person themselves. So, with every power vested in me today, I actually want to introduce our speaker for today. It's the iconic Linda Ojo. Please, drum rolls. Okay, drum rolls should come before I call the name, but then that's fine. Linda, it's a pleasure to have you on the podcast today.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I'm so excited when you asked me to join. Obviously, like we know ourselves in real life, but having a conversation and being able to like share our views about design is really something that I look forward to doing. So I don't know how much more I can do after you've done so much with the introduction, but yeah, basically I'm Linda. I am a product and icon designer. I think most people on Twitter know me for my icons, and if you go way back, you know me for other stuff. But yes, right now I'm an icon designer, and as Ufo said, I focus on simplifying complex concepts. Sometimes I see them as me summarizing the most complex of concepts. And I also translate concepts for different brands. So, what is this concept to you? What is education to you? What is success to you? And I create icons that reflect the core brand identity.
Wow, that's pretty detailed. Pretty detailed. How has the journey been for you, specifically as an icon designer? To be honest, right, before you proceed, it's not that, I don't know that very many. I can actually say you're the only person I know who do icon design. Of course, I know there's a lot. Of course.
Yeah.
But I don't even, and of course, I don't know that very many as well. But then it seems like it's not really that big, so to speak, in this part of the world, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah, like I get that a lot. I wish I had, I don't know, $1 for every time I heard that. Yes, because yes, icon design, especially will I say amongst the Nigerian design community. We all know icons, we all use icons, but we don't really have a lot of icon designers. We have great people that also do icons. Like I know Adana does icons too, alongside her wonderful digital art. And I also know that at Fort Canvas, Tunji also is in charge of their icon design, and he does a really wonderful job. But yes, like we are far and in between when it comes to like the Nigerian design ecosystem. And I guess like that should not really be much of a surprise because I think specification is an indication of growth for any ecosystem. And with the Nigerian tech system, tech ecosystem, you have, yes, front end designers, front end engineers, back end developers. And previously, we didn't even have as much like brand designers, but as the ecosystem grew, there was now space to specialize. And I think that's what's happening with icon design and also like typography. You have people setting up foundries. I think it's just like a great indication that our ecosystem is expanding and is giving room for people to specialize and become experts in a particular niche. So I think that's just like what's happening with icon designers and type experts coming up. It's just the ecosystem growing. That's my own perspective.
That's pretty broad. Yeah. And I love the fact that you're trying to you also balanced in between. By the way, shout out to Adana and shout out to
Yes.
Tunji. Yeah. Big up. I love the way you actually um spread the whole shit, letting us know that okay, I mean we're kind of in and out of it. It's not really that it's not really, really profound, specifically in this demographic. It's not really, really one major thing. And truly we are we looking forward to us, specializing in it, building
Mm-hmm.
upon it and improving in it, even to making it have its own solid foundation, even the more. Again, specifically within the Nigerian demographic. Um, for
Yes,
yeah.
I totally agree. And I really think that that will happen really soon because the
Hmm.
reception to specialization in icons and type and other um will I say niches in design is really wonderful. Like you can see there is an eagerness within the design community
Hmm.
to explore all these other aspects of design that are very, very present that we've not had the chance to in the past because everyone is you're trying to get the most popular skills to meet needs and all of that it shows. So I think the reception has been great, and I think we're going to see more and more specialists come up within our design ecosystem.
Yeah, yeah. I'm rooting for that. I'm rooting for that. What inspired you um to go into icon designs?
Hmm. Let me see. What inspired me to go into icon design?
Yeah.
Um,
Or who
I think
inspired
like
you?
the thing is that I woke up one morning. So
Mhm.
like let me just give a brief history. So like okay, I started off as a front end. I realized that I had made two icons two icon sets by mistake. So the
Wow.
thing is that yeah, so I was a front end engineer. I transitioned into design, and my focus was okay being solely a product or like UI UX designer. I'm
Hmm.
s- I still do like UI UX projects and all of that, but in when I was making the transition and I was like planning, okay, what do I want to put in my portfolio to show my range and all of that. I'd written like, oh, creating design systems, oh, designing mobile apps, websites, and all the typical stuff. And I had also included like creating an icon set. And so while like building my UI UX portfolio, I created an icon set,
Yeah.
and then I I also created like another icon set because I really enjoyed creating the first one. So I ended up like creating two icon sets for
Mm.
my UI UX portfolio. And after I was like, wait, I really enjoyed doing this so much that it feels like play to me, though it's work.
Hmm.
Um, And about you say that, oh, do what feels like do what feels like work to others, but play to you.
Mhm.
So when I realized that creating icon sets and designing icon sets felt like play to me and it was something that I really enjoyed, I decided to like take a chance and just dive into it completely, and that's how I got started with it, basically.
Wow. The fact that it's it all started out as play, right? Work. It's with work, yes, but then it's fun. It's has a lot of juvenile in it, right? And it's just what it is today for you. And you're quite very exceptional at it. I mean, I was present last year at Design Matters, and you were
Mm.
also among the speakers. And I saw your presentation. I participated in your in your workshop, and it was just mind blowing, really mind blowing. And in fact, one of the things I also learned that very day at
Yeah.
Design Matters was also the fact that um, when you were teaching at the workshop, in as much as I do vector based illustration as well, they were it was very different. It's very very different for me. It was very different.
Okay.
So I want you to touch on the lines. How do we draw the lines between this is vector based illustrations and this is icon design? How do we draw that line?
Okay. So in like with this, to be clear on what you're asking, you're saying like how do you like do I differentiate them?
Yeah.
At what point does an icon become a vector illustration and vice versa?
Hmm.
Um, so I think like that's a question that comes up often. People really like mix it up to know, oh, what's an illustration, what's an icon, what's the difference. And I think first off, right, like when icons usually should not exist on their own, they should come in a set. So an icon is part of ideally a very robust family, right?
Mm.
And so you have an icon set. Icon sets could span from like from 2000 up to like 30,000, right?
Yeah.
And so because of that, there are obvious rules that guide icons. You have set keyframes, and they are used to like communicate specific concepts, and that's basically like an icon set. And then when it comes to like illustrations have more freedom. You you could be in a, let's say, like a better word, like more expressive with illustrations. They could have like multiple elements, and you just have like more freedom when working with vector illustrations. So when you're thinking of like an icon set, every icon has often has a name and has like the key concept is like it's trying to communicate. You know that okay, these icons are going to be used on a mobile app, they're going to be used in this setting, they should be able to, you would have like a field version or a solid version of the same icon, or you could have like outlines versions of the same icon. When you think of vector illustrations, you're not thinking of, oh, a fill version of a vector illustration or an outline version of a vector illustration.
Yeah.
Typically you just have a single version of
Yeah.
a vector illustration. And icons also tend to be like more depend most of them tend to be like more formal and use less colors and elements compared to like vector
Hmm.
illustrations. Like there's no limit to what you can do with vector illustrations. It can go really, really like wild and crazy and span in different directions. But when you're dealing with icons, because of like those rules and sets, it's like you will not just be using any curve up and down
Yeah.
or in an icon set. It's like you'd want every curve to match throughout the icon set.
Mm-hmm.
So that's like a lot of words. But obviously, like this is a podcast, so I
Yeah.
have to use a lot of words. We don't have like any visual aid to
Yeah.
help differentiate. But some things also is just like by the time you get into it, there are some things you can't wrap words around that you just understand and you'd be able to tell that, oh, okay, this isn't it. And there's, I would say that yes, there's some icons depending on the on like um what the use case is. You could even describe them as really really small
Mm-hmm.
illustrations because they could use texture and light could bounce off them and they could look like just really small illustrations, but then they are used in an icon set setting. So, but typically, just like with design, you have overlaps, you have places where the lines get blurred, but you just have what like the masses usually use in a
Yeah.
sense. So most icons are formal and most vector illustrations are more informal and could use a lot of elements basically.
Yeah. That's
I hope that
pretty
that
detailed. Oh,
helps.
very well. Very well. Yes. I mean, I was taking notes, right? Let me start from
Mm,
the most recent one. Most icons are quite formal. Vector illustrations are quite informal. Uh, for icons, not necessarily do they come alone. They majorly would come in packs, right?
yeah,
But for illustrations, you can just have a standalone illustrations. For icons, when you work on icons, you have to think about both the stroke version and the fill version of what it will look like. But for
yeah,
illustration, not necessarily would you do that. So it's pretty much, you pretty much went into keen details, differentiating both parts. And thank you. And sometimes, right, icons could also look like small illustrations. So yeah, this
yeah.
so the lines can be they can be actually drawn out. Like you can pretty much
Mm-hmm.
differentiate these things. And that's fascinating. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. What would you say is your least favorite thing about being an icon designer?
Hmm. So let me see. I think I won't say like my least favorite, but I'll
Hmm.
just say maybe it's maybe like the hard thing at the moment. I
Okay.
think right now with icons, it's there's a bit of like let's say evangelism that needs to be done around it. You understand?
Mm, yeah.
Like the preaching to let you understand that hey, okay, there is a better way we
Mhm.
can handle icons. We we should like know how to create them, how to use them, and how they work. So right now it's just like I think it's just like the evangelism and the preaching around it that needs to happen because you also have to kind of like depending on your target audience, you
Yeah.
get there's some people that already like know what the value of this is and the importance of it. And then there's another group that don't really like understand the
Hmm.
value of what you're doing. But I think like in general, it's not like a new problem. It's also something that you would say is associated with design as a whole. You have people that don't really appreciate design or understand the importance
Yeah.
and could look down on design. And I'm
Mhm.
sure that it's not something that is particular to just icon design, but it's something that both product designers and illustrators and every other designer out there has actually faced. I believe you've also faced it.
Yeah.
I,
Yeah.
and you have to be intentional to like not put yourself in a
Hmm.
room where your work is
Yeah.
being looked down upon.
Yeah. Yeah. I've actually experienced something like that as well, specifically in
Mm,
my illustration part, where
mm,
one would feel like, say they're paying for specifically product design gig,
mm-hmm.
right? Maybe I'm to designing an app, a mobile
Yeah.
app, and it's more like, well, it's not just to illustrate, like just add it. It's not really there's no designated budget for illustrations in that concept, but then it is more like it should be among the minimum requirements for the product design gig, just trying to generalize it in
Yes.
general. So yeah, I can relate to that concept. I've personally experienced it. Yeah. Now, what would you say would be the most favorite thing you enjoy, right, about being an icon designer?
Um, that I think like that's a great question
Mm-hmm.
because um for me like I'm a curious person. I
Mm-hmm.
have multiple interests and I'm always exploring those interests. And for me, I think icon design is like a blend of my interests or my current interests at the moment. So I when I was in like secondary school, when I was a science student, I liked arts and I liked like drawing a bit. I was not the type that would like draw at the back of my notebooks or anything. Maybe that was you.
Sure. Very well, me. Yeah.
I'm sure you're giving that vibe, like on the back of your notebooks, you're drawing
Yeah.
Superman, Spider Man, or you even
Definitely.
created a comic book at a point.
Oh my
I'm very
goodness.
sure.
You
I'm
knew
very
me.
sure.
You knew me back then. You knew I just didn't know you knew me.
You should know what we didn't go to the same secondary school. But yes, sir. But like I wasn't sketching at the back of my notebooks or anything, but
Yeah.
I particularly loved attending arts class. Like when it was time for fine arts drawing in the classroom, when others are like making noise or something, and there's a still drawing to like recreate during the period. Like I would be focused. Like I'm trying to
Mm-hmm.
recreate this thing as closely as possible within the hour, that I have for the class. So the hour always flew by for me. So I always knew that I loved like drawing and sketching and doing things like that. But I knew that it wasn't like the typical, I would draw a portrait of a human
Yeah.
and like go all the way. So it was like I liked drawing, but it was like not not like an expert, but I
Mm-hmm.
loved like sketching. I think that's the reason like I leaned into like abstract art where there was no there was no like benchmark on what looked good. It was about how you expressed yourself.
Mm.
So I always remember like I used to do like some abstract arts because I just loved the idea that the fact that I, as a person, I have innate value, and the fact alone that I think that this comes out of me and this
Mm-hmm.
is my perspective of something is enough. It is enough. I don't need like external validation. So I loved abstract drawing,
Yeah.
and so with icons, which we're actually talking about, I
Mm-hmm.
get to like I get to like sketch and create what my expression of the different concepts are, especially in like personal passion projects.
Yeah.
I get to like express myself and say, oh, what would this look like if that was happening? What would the Olympics look like in Nigeria? What would the
Mm-hmm.
pictogram look like? And all of those things. So I get to like draw, and I also get to use metaphors, which is like create my own metaphors for things. And I also get to use software and tech tools because I also love technology.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just feel like it's a nice blend that I get to create things that icons that will be used on software and in tech. So I still feel like a tech babe, and I still feel like a starving artist in a sense. So it's just the sweet the sweet spot for me.
Yeah. That's fascinating. the whole journey, the whole process, the truly it's the little things that count. It is
Mm-hmm.
the fun part of it. What would you say is the roadmap to becoming an icon designer? Right. Someone wants to venture into that field. What would you
Mm-hmm.
prescribe as a roadmap?
Hmm. Um, I think like if I would say like what's the roadmap to getting into icon design. First off, I'll say it's not like there's certain professions like being a doctor that you'd have to kind of go to a certified um school, to learn the right things and all of that. But that's not icon design. I feel like that's not a lot of things with, will I say, like you can learn online is basically what I'm trying to say, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if you want to get into icons, I think a rough roadmap, I would say first is to get comfortable with like sketching. And
Mm.
specifically, I said sketching, not drawing.
Drawing, yeah.
You have to get comfortable with sketching. And that's also something that we did at the workshop in Design Matters, kind of
Mm-hmm.
like loosen loosen up a bit, and like you can fine tune everything when you get into the vector tool. But you have to get comfortable sketching, and sketching up to an extent that you'll be able to communicate with stakeholders via your sketches. Because when you're dealing with icons, you don't want to have to let's say create the vector version of everything, because that takes a lot more work.
Mm-hmm.
So first off, you kick off with with sketching, and then you would now like read up articles. So there are a lot of articles out there on like introduction to icon design. They would walk you through the like principles of icon design, and they would also walk you through like the foundation of how typically icons are created with use of like keyframes, and you learn about stroke rates and all of that. So I don't think it's a very like, I would say like it's not, you don't have a steep learning curve to getting started like with icon design.
Mm-hmm.
If in any sense you have your foundation, it will just be like, imagine you're becoming a designer, and then once you've learned everything to learn about design, then you take a step further to now focus on being an icon designer. So I think like also like with me, it was like, okay, I got into design, I learned the basics of design, the overall principles for product design. And then once I was comfortable with that a bit, you learn about like layout and contrasts and all of those things.
Mm-hmm.
Then you can take a step further and then learn the principles of icon design. But you know that the parent principles of design also apply in that sense. So do you get what I'm trying to
Yes.
say?
Yes. Yes, I
Yeah.
do.
So you
And
can just come in at the end, like design is design. You learn the concept, you learn the principles of icon design, and then you learn how to use the vector tools like Figma, Illustrator, Affinity Designer, and all of that. My favorite is Figma, by the way. And then you create and you begin to practice. And
mm-hmm.
there are a lot of like YouTube tutorials and articles out there that you can reference. One of my favorite is Helena Zhang. She has written about over like seven articles that cover most aspects of icon design. And she's active on Medium and on Twitter. So that's also something you could read. And also, Bonnie Kate Wolf has a very thorough introduction to icon design that I
Mm-hmm.
always recommend to newbies. And in all of this, I also like have a curated guide, like introduction to icon design,
Yeah.
on my Twitter bio. Is a link to a Notion page, and basically kind of like summarize how I also got into it. Literally with the first tutorial that I watched on YouTube to get the foundation and all of that. So
Mm.
once you've gotten all of those basics, what's left is on you to just practice. and get better. But I would say like the learning curve isn't steep at all when it comes to icon design. Might be steep for design as a whole,
Mm-hmm.
but not
Mm-hmm.
icon design.
Yeah. I mean, I I I can be working on a particular project and I realize that the I need an icon that is not in this set or it's not necessarily here. I'm sure you've experienced something like that before. And
Yeah.
I may want to like rush into, let me just see if I can just go on to create it. And I realize, well, yes, I can follow the same sort of pattern for vector illustrations and the likes of that. But then
Mm.
I would realize that I would spend more time that I would usually do on a particular piece, maybe vector illustration, the likes of that. So truly having a roadmap to learn, I think it's something I'm definitely going to adopt. Definitely, one of the skill I'll be adding to my collection this year is going to be icon
Mm.
designs. Yeah, it's very much needed at this point. Very
Yeah,
much needed.
like I can tell you'd be so good at it. Like you'd be so great at
Thank
it.
you.
Like you have
Appreciate.
all you have all of this experience, like experience to spare with vector illustration. I
Yeah.
think like coming into icons is just once you just figure out the principles, you're just like, oh that I was just missing this piece or that piece and it will just come together for you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really looking forward to seeing your icons.
Thank you.
I'm
Yeah.
just it would be crazy.
Yeah, I'm going to pick them up. I'm going to pick them up. So, can you actually read my palm and tell me what icon I am? Like, do you really have that power to do to do that?
I feel yes, I do.
Okay, so I mean,
I
you've met me before. You've met me before. So, what icon would you say I am?
You didn't show me your palm. You
Oh
didn't
my
show me your
goodness!
palm. That was your mistake.
That was
Hmm?
beautiful.
You didn't show me your palm. Next time you show me your
Next
palm
time,
and
next time,
I'll tell you what icon you
next
are.
time. I definitely will show you my palm next time. Next time.
Mm-hmm.
What's your general approach to designing icons? What's the step like?
Okay. Um, it always starts with research. Like
Mm-hmm.
I'm always researching, and I think like for me, even bef- before I even put like pen to paper,
Mm-hmm.
the design that icon concept might have been like in my head for a few months or so.
Mm.
I I think like most designers we're always gathering references and inspiration,
Yeah.
taking screenshots and all of
Screenshots,
that.
yeah.
So like um I think like my design process starts a long time before I actually start sketching. I surround myself like with a lot of inspiration on social media. I let it come to me on my Behance, on Pinterest, on Twitter. I follow a lot of icon designers. I also love a lot of like icon content. So that way I'm continually like seeing what's happening. So sometimes I see some concepts that I like, some styles that I think, oh, it would be nice to put a twist on this or to
Mm-hmm.
like create something with this texture and all of that. So usually when I'm about to start, because I already have like a reference, is now it's now good to like start research from that. Then you can say, oh, I'm starting from this point and I'm spreading to find more things that look like what I want to create and see what the process is like or basically what the different approaches are out there and to ask, oh, what is there a new perspective I can bring into this? You get what I mean?
Yes.
So it always starts out with research. And I think like with what I'm saying, this is basically for personal personal projects. I do a lot of like personal um projects because I think that's where the fun is for me. When working with clients and companies, you know that they already know what they want. So like you're trying to create the client's vision,
Mm-hmm.
for their icons and everything. You can work with them, but still it's a user or client centered kind of
Yes.
project. You get what I mean? So
Yes.
you get a lot more like creative freedom when you're doing your own passion projects, because even if you're strict, I don't know how strict you'll be with yourself. So
Mhm.
in when working on like my passion projects, it just kicks off with a lot of research and gathering inspiration and all. And then I get into sketching. So I love sketching because it lets me like iterate really fast and try out different styles really quickly. So I typically sketch on a tab, but I've also sketched on pen on paper before. It doesn't really matter. And once I'm done sketching and I'm I'm happy with what it looks like right now, then I take it into um the vector tool. I usually
Yeah.
depending on the style of the icon, if it's something that requires like advanced vector manipulation, I could use a different software like Affinity Designer.
Oh, okay.
And so once I create things in Figma, but obviously there'll still like be tweaks within that.
Mhm.
And because they are passion projects, I don't usually like create like so much. I don't like I won't create 8,000. I think I've done like 50 for a passion project to kind of like get it out of my system. But then I create the icons and then I post them on Twitter for you guys to see.
Yeah.
That's that's kind of like what my process is like. But when creating the icons, when sketching, you have to think of what the metaphors are that you're going to use. What is the brand like? Because you'd have like an imaginary brand or client
Mhm.
in your mind and you on your head, and you'd have to say, okay, I'm creating this icon set for this brand. This is what their vibe is. This is what they're trying to communicate. This is what they want to use the icons for and where they want to use the icons. So with that, you'll be able to like have more constraints and like give more direction to what you're working on.
Okay. That's pretty much detailed. Pretty detailed.
What's your own process like when designing one of your killer? When you're creating an avatar for Layer,
Mhm.
what's the process? Or
Okay.
or that or
Well,
that 2K,
yeah, that okay.
that 2K
Using the
one.
2K as an
Please come and explain
yeah.
that 2K illustration you gave us
the
few months
the
ago. What were
2K
you thinking?
the 2K illustrator. So I needed something that was okay. I was actually working on a different project. So
Mm,
I needed to take a break. And I think quite a number
mm,
of illustrators do this. Actually, those I've conversed with, it's
mm,
something we all do at some point. We take a break from illustrating by actually illustrating. So I was on my break
mm,
from illustration works, and I just saw that kid, and I felt like, you know what, let me have a very clear picture for this. And originally I did that just for the fun of it. So there was nothing, not necessarily
mm,
was there a creative process for that particular
mm,
illustration. So, and I saw the meme, I looked at it, and because of my, the years of experience I've had working on vector-based illustrations, I can just
mm,
open my vector-based software and just start vectorizing with no sketch needed. I can just
mm.
start doing
Yeah.
it. So, and it's easy for even some who are actually just starting out as well. So
Mm-hmm.
that was the basic thing, and I just needed that thing for the fun of it, and that was pretty much how that illustration came to be. There was not that very many thought process went into it, and I didn't even know it was going to get
Mm-hmm.
the attention it did. And
I I get.
yeah, but in general,
Yeah.
my creative process to working on project illustration project also, of course, it starts with research. But for me as
Mm,
an illustrator, most of the time I get briefs, creative briefs. So when the
mm-hmm.
brief comes in, one thing I love to ask for is creative liberty. In as much as I've been given a creative brief, I would also love to have
Mm,
creative liberty. That is, if would you be flexible enough if there's something I personally feel, should flow in, or we should sort of remove, if that would sort of rigid my workflow and all. So
Yeah.
I asked for creative uh, liberty. Then should that be given or access granted or denied, whichever. Then I go into
Mm-hmm.
research. Having the brief, I research based on the brief and also outside the brief,
Mm.
just to not feel like restrained in general. And this is
Yeah.
heavily illustration work. And based off of the fact that, and for illustrations, I have to send in sketches so that the clients
Yeah.
can visualize what I'm about to draw. Right? I don't just want to go into vectorizing and at the end of the day I realize, okay, it's not accepted. So that will prompt me
Mm-hmm.
to go into my sketch after my research has been made and worked on both within and outside the brief. Then I would send in rough sketches for the client or the brand. Should it be approved or we are changing something, we'd work on that. Then I go into
Yeah.
inking, and after inking, send the deliverables and, get my balance. It's pretty much
Abby.
very, yeah, it's pretty much a very uh, straightforward method for me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
while you were explaining, I was looking out, I was, already envisioning in my mind, like, okay, there's a lot of intricacies that comes with icon design. It needs a lot of attention in that
Mm.
context. Yeah, it's not something you can just say, well, maybe because I'm an illustrator, I should be able to do that. No, I wouldn't want to. That would be me underestimating icon design if I do that with the way you're
Yeah.
explaining it. Let's talk about the significance of typography and colors in icon designs, because uh, for very vast majority of icons we know we have, it's basically black,
Mm-hmm.
white, right? Black and white. So
Yeah.
what would you, let's touch on significance of typography and colors in icon design.
Yeah. I think like you're right. We're coming from a time when you think of icons, you just think of black and white,
Mm-hmm.
but also like with the uprise of like branding, more companies are taking branding seriously and are being intentional. It's it's not surprising that we also see that being affecting the type of icons that we have out there.
Yeah.
Because yes, basically icon design is in a sense a subset of brand design. You
Mm-hmm.
get.
Yeah.
So um so yes, right now we're seeing more icons with more character, basically. Icons that have more character. You're seeing more 3D icons. You're seeing isometric icons. You're seeing icons that with um ranging different like opacities and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
And we now have more like animated icons and all. And it's actually a lot of things like are happening in the sector right now, and it's changing and just growing, and icons are even being redefined. It's like they're going through like a fashion makeover in a sense, and
Mm-hmm.
we're now seeing more and more icons, and more people are realizing that, oh, icons, there are more to icons, because there has always been more to icons.
Yeah.
If you have a brand and you're expressing your identity. Your identity should not be shown in, like, let's say, in your type, in your imagery, in the product design. And then when it
Mm-hmm.
comes to like the icons that you use, then all of a sudden you're willing to play it safe and be a generalist.
Yeah.
You understand?
Mm-hmm.
And the thing with icons is that even though within, let's say, tech, we are so used to seeing them within the digital space. The truth is that icons are very, very present also in the physical space. You have them in buildings, you have them on road signs, you have them everywhere. They are actually everywhere. Like once you get into icons, you realize that because we live in a world where everyone's like speaks different languages, the best way to actually communicate is like through pictures, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because and like an image an image cannot be misinterpreted, basically. So icons transcend language, and because um the internet is over the world together, it also makes sense that we're trying to push to use forms of communications that are not limited by languages. You get what I mean?
Yes.
Yeah. So that's something that we're seeing, and I feel like if you've ever like used your phone in a state where like by mistake you change the language from like English to Chinese or something like that, you'd realize that
Hmm.
you'd be depending on the icons like no man's business. That
Yeah,
setting,
true. That's true.
when you find that
Yeah,
setting icon, you now see something like
yeah.
maybe Chinese text. You're just depending so much on imagery because now the words and the
Hmm.
text don't matter to you. But oddly enough, like with your mention of typography,
Hmm.
one thing I like to do is I try to avoid using text in my icons. That is the icon style itself, like the icon by itself should not have text in its design,
Oh, I
but I
see.
always push for my icons to be used with labels, especially in a situation where it's not a universal icon. So I always push for like icons to be used with labels. Let the typography being used match the icon style and all of that. But I don't like putting actual text within an icon design because it breaks, I feel like, a very core feature for me
Hmm.
with icons, which is its ability to transcend languages.
Hmm. That's it's pretty unique. In fact, speaking about the point when you even mistakenly maybe switch from um, a language you understand to a language you don't,
Yeah.
right? And heavily depending on. When you were talking about that, I actually just realized that it's sort of in the same group as you never really know the importance of something until you really need it, right? And truly, I was just looking
Yeah.
at what, how else would I be able to navigate this phone if not for these icons?
Mm,
Yeah,
yeah.
indeed. I mean, with the plot twist that icons are actually, well, they are a large vast of icons are actually small. It's truly the small things
Mm-hmm.
that count. It's the small things that end up
Yes.
saving the day. Truly, it is. Mm-hmm.
Yes. They serve a very important role in accessibility.
Yeah.
And that's just like on the phone. It also happens like when you travel to another country and then you don't understand what the signs
Mm-hmm.
you're seeing on the streets are. They're just looking for images.
Mm, yeah.
What symbol do I can I understand?
Yeah. Do you fight the urge to wanting to create every icon you have to use for a particular project? Like you just want to create it yourself?
Actually, like funny enough, I don't.
Oh wow.
Um
And the reason I'm asking is because for me as an illustrator, right? If I'm working on a
yeah.
particular project, of course there are some illustrations or maybe certain websites that we can download for free and the likes of that. I
Mm-hmm.
still want to create my own illustrations. I still want to do it myself. I don't know if
You
that's
know,
exactly.
yeah, but maybe because of the numbers. Do you
Oh,
understand?
I see.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah, you like I don't know what's the highest number of illustrations? Maybe 150. I don't know.
500.
That
That.
ah
Actually,
it's
that's
mad.
past. At the time of this recording, there is an illustration pack that
Mm-hmm.
will be coming out that I can't talk about, but it's way more than that. But the one I've done before is 500 at stretch.
Aha,
Yeah.
you see. So like now in this situation, like you're doing that is the job that you are
Hmm.
doing. Do you get? You're not you're not creating like
Yeah.
a different product and then having like to create an illustration pack by the side. So you could like give them a more complete illustration
Hmm.
pack to start the project with. In a sense, you get what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
So like honestly, like even though I love creating icons, the truth is like they're also like the icon community. We're so giving. Like there are a lot of free icons actually really good. Like I
Hmm.
know Feathers is a great one. I also like Phosphor Icons by Helena Zhang. And there's also chunk icons. There are a lot of icons sets out there that come with their own character that could also like it could do the job. You're keeping it sleek, you're keeping it minimal. I think there's also
Hmm.
huge icons recently. So with the icon community, there there are there are good icons out there that you could also use like on a project if you are you are shy for time, like when you don't have a lot of
Yeah,
time, you get, because you want to like when you're handing over, you might not be there all through.
true.
And so you want the product to be scalable. You don't want to have to like always be dependent on, even though that could be cool for money, but at a point it might not be practical anymore. And um so yeah, like there are icon sets out there that people could use. But another thing is like in with the preaching about iconography, apart from being able to like design icons for yourself,
Hmm.
you also want to have the ability to like create icon sets. You also want to have the ability to extend an icon set in a situation where what you're looking for does not exist in the icon set. There are situations, no matter how big the icon sets are, everybody has specific needs. You might want something that is just not yet covered by the icon set you're using. As a designer, it would be nice to have you know, the basic or the 20%, of the icon design skills that you need to like create something that would fit in seamlessly in the icon set that you are
Yeah.
using, because sometimes you look at a product and you can just easily spot when they borrowed an icon from somewhere else that does not fit into their current icon set,
Hmm.
and you realize that okay, even with a little bit of tweaks here and there, they could make the disparity between the two icons less. You get, at
Yes.
least to the user. They'll make
Yeah.
it not so obvious to the user. But you just have situations where some people will even mix line icons and solid icons.
Mm.
And that doesn't work, right? Someone might say, oh, it's just little icons. But when you think about like accessibility, and when you're working like with let's say you have different themes, right?
Yeah.
You want to be able to have dark mode and light mode
Yes.
depending on the preference of the user. The line icon and the solid icon, they won't have the same contrast. Like even if they have the same color, they won't have the same level of
Hmm.
contrast in all the different themes.
Yeah. You mentioned something about accessibility, and which would lead me to ask, how do you ensure that your icons are accessible and easily understandable for users with different abilities?
Okay. So just like most like icon um UI products, icons are also tested, right?
Yeah.
Like as usual, you'd always recommend that okay, you should test your icons with your target audience and see how they respond to it. And apart from even being accessible in terms of understanding, you also have to make sure that they're accessible in terms of like scale. Make sure that you're creating icons that would work in different scales and are even usable by the developers in the first place. Sometimes I think it's one of the principles of icon design, that's ease of use.
Ease of
You have to
use.
make sure
Yeah.
that the icons you're designing, they don't actually they aren't buggy, they don't break, they can actually be used and exported, and they would still look the same when exported into different formats. And when you're there's sometimes that when you're creating icons for a really small scale, you could remove certain elements that will make it blurry, but you could afford to keep those elements on a bigger scale. That's responsive icons. But obviously, we don't have a lot of responsive icons out there, but you also have the concept of responsive icons where you could have the same icon but with slight variations
Mm.
depending on the scale that they are being used. So, in making your icons accessible, you could explore responsive icons. You could make sure to ensure that they work really well at all scales. You should make sure that you're testing with the users to ensure that the concepts you're communicating, and you also have to like test with the developers to see how they work within the app. Because some icons can do so well out of context. But when you put them in context, you realize that maybe the copy that is put close to the icon make it or could make it seem like it means something else. You understand?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
And how do you stay up to date with latest trends and icons?
I think it's typical to like how any other designer would just stay up, to date with latest trends. You would, follow the right people, listen to relevant podcasts like Design Station podcast.
Yay!
Maybe, yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Yeah.
You listen to relevant podcasts, like surround yourself with the right information. And in this day and age where basically your data is being stolen everywhere you go, you might as well take advantage of it. If typically maybe if you want to like see more of something, click the like button, bookmark it, talk
Yeah.
about it,
Yeah.
and you get more of that. It would be tailored to your feed, and just like also like interact, ask questions, and see what's out there. But it's not like rocket science, not that complex. Just read articles, have a passion, have an interest for it, and definitely inspiration will come. And you also should like question like what you see inspiration as. Make sure that you're not in code being inspired within a box. Oh, I can only get inspiration from Behance or Pinterest. Anything I'm seeing outside does not matter. No, design is literally everywhere. Everything we interact with was designed by someone. It had a purpose. So that's also one thing I love, like just taking in everything and asking questions, what if
Yeah.
this was that? And yeah, and see what happens.
This has truly been a very educative episode for me on icon designs, and I really want to say a very big thank you, Linda. Thank you so much for agreeing to speak on this podcast. Thank you for honoring the invitation. This is just beautiful, and I definitely hope, right, as many who would listen to this podcast with this particular episode, would find the passion anywhere it is, find it, go and find it, to pick up icon designs, and let's run with it this year.
Thank you very much. First, let me just say thank you.
Thank you
for having me on the podcast. Like, it was so fun. I can't believe it's been an hour already.
Honestly, yeah.
Time literally just flew by.
Yeah.
But I'm really glad that like you had me on the podcast, and like you said, I hope everyone is able to like find value in our conversation.
Yes.
And are able to like create icons. Yeah, so thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for honoring the invitation. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Thank you for listening to this episode on the Designstration podcast with Ufot Ubon. If you enjoyed this episode, kindly leave us a review on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or Google Podcasts. You can also suggest a topic or ask a question by filling out the form in the description below. We also appreciate when you share this podcast with friends and other creatives, even as you make plans to join us again next time, as we bring you more insightful conversations like this. Design plus illustration equals designstration.